Hello everyone. I invite you to continue listening to the horror story, which is thrilling and captivating. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you everyone. Story: The terrifying things in the abandoned prison in Switzerland. Deep within the jagged embrace of the Swiss Alps, where the wind cuts like a blade and the peaks loom like silent sentinels, stands an abandoned prison. Its name has been lost to time, erased from maps and hushed by the villagers of nearby Valgris, a quaint settlement dwarfed by the mountain's shadow. Built in the 18th century to cage the most depraved souls of the land, the prison was abandoned in 1923 under a veil of mystery. Now, its crumbling walls sag under the weight of neglect, and the locals speak of it only in fearful whispers. They call it cursed. Visitors who stray too close feel an unshakable dread. And I, a journalist with a hunger for the uncanny, couldn't resist its pull. I arrived in Valgris on a crisp autumn day, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The village was picture-perfect chalets with steep roofs, a cobblestone square, a weary fountain, but it carried a quiet unease. The villagers dodged my questions about the prison, their gazes flickering to the mountains as if something might descend. Only Margot, an old woman who ran the inn, offered me a sliver of truth over a cup of bitter tea. "You're chasing the prison?" she rasped, her trembling hands betraying her nerves. "It's not a place for the living. The walls, they keep things that don't rest." "What things?" I asked, leaning closer. She paused, her eyes clouded. "The prisoners, the guards, the echoes. They say when it shut down, not everyone got out. Some stayed trapped, not by iron, but by something darker." Her words clung to me as I set out the next morning, my camera swinging from my neck, my backpack heavy with supplies. The trek to the prison was grueling, a twisting path through dense forest and up rocky slopes. The higher I climbed, the quieter the world grew. No birds, no breeze, just my labored breaths and the crunch of gravel. By midday, the prison emerged from the mist, a hulking ruin of weathered stone, its towers crooked like fractured bones. Ivy strangled the walls, and the rusted gates groaned as they hung open, inviting me into the gloom. The courtyard was a wasteland, shards of glass, splintered wood, and the ghostly frame of what might have been a gallows. Stepping inside, I felt the air thicken, heavy with rot and silence. My flashlight cut through the darkness of the entrance hall, revealing peeling paint and rows of cell doors, their hinges corroded. Scratched into the walls were desperate pleas in faded French. Libérez-moi. Je suis innocent. Free me. I am innocent. I snapped photos, the shutters echo unnaturally sharp. The prison sprawled like a maze, corridors snaking into cell blocks, stairwells plunging into shadow, and a central atrium where a shattered skylight leaked faint light. Felt alive in a way, its silence watchful. In the first cell block, I found relics: a rusted cot, a cracked sink, and manacles chained to the wall, their links dangling like dead hands. Touching them sent a jolt of despair through me, as if the cell remembered its captive and wanted me to share his torment. Shaking it off, I pressed deeper. In one cell, I discovered brittle letters scattered on the floor, their ink blurred by age. One read, "Ma chère Elise, I can't endure this much longer. The guards are brutal, but the nights, they're worse. I hear them, the others. They whisper my name, though I'm alone. I think they're dead, Elise. I think they want me with them. Asterisk." The ensign note crumbled as I set it down, my pulse racing. Margot's warning rang in my ears. Not everyone got out. I told myself it was a madman's delusion, but the doubt lingered. Then came the stairwell, leading to the basement. Its wall bore hundreds of tally marks, clawed into the stone with savage desperation. At the base, one word was etched. Akutz. Listen. I stopped, ears straining. At first, there was only the wind's distant wail. Then, a faint tapping, slow, deliberate, drifted from below. It was no random sound. It had intent. Curiosity overpowered fear, and I descended. The basement was a dank labyrinth, the air reeking of mold and iron. The tapping grew louder, guiding me to a rusted door at the tunnel's end. It was locked, but the sound pulsed from within. Tap, tap, tap. I pressed my ear to the metal and it stopped. Silence stretched. Then a whisper slithered through the keyhole. Asterisk. You shouldn't be here. Asterisk. I lurched back, my flashlight flickering. Logic insisted it was the wind, but my gut screamed otherwise. The tapping resumed, frantic now, bouncing off the walls. I ran, panic driving me through the twisting tunnels until I stumbled into the atrium, chest heaving. The skylight's glow was fading, the sky bruising with dusk. My watch read 4:47 p.m. Hours had slipped away unnoticed. I had to leave, but as I turned for the exit, I saw it, a figure at the atrium's edge, still as death, cloaked in rags. Hello, I called, voice shaking. It didn't move. My flashlight barely touched it, outlining a gaunt shape. A prisoner? A mirage? I stepped closer, and it melted into the shadows. I fled, racing down the mountain as the wind howled, carrying faint, mocking laughter. Night cloaked Valgris by the time I returned, its streets empty. Margot waited at the inn, her face etched with knowing. You saw something, she said flatly. I nodded. What is that place? She sank by the fire, weary. It wasn't just a prison. In the 1900s, they experimented down there, secret things. Doctors broke minds, not bodies. Most went insane. Some became something else. Something else. Pressed. Not human, she murmured. When they sealed it, they thought it'd end. But what they stirred down there, it's still stirring. Sleep eluded me that night, the tapping haunting my dreams alongside whispers and that figure's silhouette. At dawn, I left Valgris, swearing never to return. Yet the prison's grip lingered. Months later, I developed my photos. Most were ordinary blurry cells, dark halls. But one from the atrium chilled me. In the corner where the figure stood, a smudge of shadow loomed, human-like, and faintly scratched into the floor was Akutz. I burned it, but the whispers followed me still. Next, there is another story about the terrifying methods of torture and coercion in an abandoned prison in Switzerland. Story: the terrifying things in the abandoned prison in Switzerland. In the heart of the Swiss Alps, where the mountains rise like jagged scars against the sky and the wind moans with an ancient sorrow, there stands an abandoned prison. Its name has faded from records, swallowed by time and fear, but the villagers of Valgris, a small hamlet nestled in the valley below, know it only as a place of nightmares. Built in the late 1700s to confine Switzerland's most reviled criminals, it was forsaken in 1923 after decades of whispered atrocities. Now, its crumbling stone walls slump under the weight of their own history, and the locals shun its shadow. I, a historian obsessed with the dark corners of the past, came to uncover its secrets. I arrived in Valgris on a bleak November afternoon, the air biting with frost and the scent of wood smoke. The village was a quaint cluster of chalets and narrow streets, but its charm masked a palpable tension. When I asked about the prison, the villagers turned away, their faces tightening. Only Klaus, a grizzled old man who tended the tavern, offered me a reluctant tale over a glass of schnapps. You're digging into that place? He muttered, his voice rough as gravel. It's a tomb, not a prison. What they did to the men inside, It wasn't justice. It was hell. And hell doesn't let go. What did they do? I asked, my pen hovering over my notebook. He stared into his drink. Torture. Worse than you can imagine. The guards, the doctors, they broke bodies and souls. When it closed, they said it was for renovations. Lies. Something broke loose up there, and they couldn't cage it again. His words fueled my resolve. The next morning, I hiked toward the prison, my boots crunching through frostbitten leaves. The path climbed steeply, the forest thinning until the prison loomed ahead. A fortress of decay, its towers sagging like weary giants. The gates hung open, rusted hinges creaking, and the courtyard beyond was a wasteland of shattered stone and twisted iron. I stepped inside, the air turning cold and stale, as if the walls exhaled the breath of the damned. The entrance hall was a cavern of shadows, its walls scarred with cracks and faint scratches names. Dates, pleas for mercy etched in desperation. Asterisk aidez-moi. Pity. Asterisk help me. Mercy. My flashlight swept over rusted cell doors, some ajar, revealing glimpses of the horrors within. I photographed everything, the shutters snap echoing like a gunshot. The prison unfolded like a nightmare, narrow corridors branching into cell blocks, staircases spiraling into darkness, and a central hall where a fractured skylight cast eerie patterns on the floor. In the first cell block, I found evidence of its brutal past. A wooden chair bolted to the stone, its armrests gouged with claw marks. A rusted table stained with dark, ominous streaks, and chains dangling from the ceiling, their hooks crusted with something I didn't want to name. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest, and I felt a sudden pang of anguish. Not mine, but borrowed from the room itself. Deeper in, I stumbled upon a guard's logbook, its leather cover warped and pages yellowed. The entries, written in tight German script, chronicled the prison's descent into madness. Asterisk 12 Mars 1898. Prisoner 47 resisted punishment. Applied the Iron Maiden 3 hours. Screams ceased after 2. Body disposed of in the pit. Asterisk. Asterisk 19 June 1901. Dr. Vogel began his treatments. Prisoner 19's tongue removed for insolence. Still alive, per orders. Asterisk. Asterisk for October 1910. The new device works. Prisoner 63's hands crushed. Begged for death. Denied. Asterisk. I shuddered, imagining the Iron Maiden, not the medieval myth, but a custom contraption of steel and spikes and the unnamed device that mangled flesh. The logbook's final entry, dated 1923, was scrawled in a frantic hand. Asterisk. They're screaming again. Not the prisoners, the walls. We have to leave. Asterisk. The words chilled me, but I pressed on. In a lower cell block, I found a wall pocked with bullet holes. The stone beneath stained a sickly brown. Nearby lay a pile of rusted tools, pliers, hammers, a jagged blade strewn as if abandoned mid-task. The silence was suffocating, broken only by a faint drip, drip, drip from somewhere unseen. I followed the sound to a barred grate in the floor, peering into a black pit below. The smell hit me first. Decay, sharp and rancid. My flashlight caught a glint of bone, piled haphazardly in the muck. The pit from the logbook. I gagged, stumbling back. The basement beckoned next, a stairwell descending into an abyss. The walls here were slick with moisture, etched with frantic scratches. Asterisk L7. Ellis Regarden. Asterisk they know. They watch. At the bottom, a corridor stretched into darkness, lined with iron doors. Behind one, I heard it a low, guttural moan, rising and falling like a wounded animal. I froze, my flashlight trembling. The moan stopped, replaced by a wet, dragging sound, as if something heavy slid across the floor. I didn't wait to see what it was. I turned the handle locked and backed away, my heart hammering. But the prison wasn't done with me. In a larger chamber, I found the remnants of Dr. Vogel's treatments, a metal table with leather straps, stained crimson, a tray of surgical tools, their edges dulled by use, and a glass jar, cracked but intact, holding what looked like a shriveled finger. The air buzzed with a strange energy, and as I reached for my camera, the jar tipped over, rolling toward me. I jumped back, and a whisper harsh and guttural filled the room. Asterisk, stay. Asterisk. I ran, the dragging sound echoing behind me, louder now, relentless. The corridors twisted, disorienting me, the shadows stretching like claws. I burst into the central hall, the skylight above dimming as dusk crept in. My watch read 5:12 p.m. Time had slipped away, stolen by the prison's grip. I headed for the exit, but paused. At the hall's edge stood a figure tall, emaciated, its limbs bent unnaturally, its face obscured by matted hair. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze, heavy and hateful. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking. It tilted its head, then lurched forward, its movements jerky, like a marionette with snapped strings. I bolted, the figure's rasping breaths chasing me through the gates and down the mountain. The wind screamed, carrying cries that weren't human, and I didn't stop until Valgriss's lights glimmered below. Klaus was at the tavern, his eyes narrowing as I staggered in. "You saw them," he said. "Them?" I gasped, collapsing into a chair. "The broken ones," he replied. "The prisoners they tortured, they didn't die right. The guards, the doctors, they fed something in those walls. Pain, rage. It's still there, feeding. I left Valgriss at dawn. The prison's horrors etched into my mind. Weeks later, I reviewed my photos. Most were, as expected, blurred cells, grim tools. But one, from the central hall, showed the figure its face visible now. A grotesque mask of scars and hollow eyes, its mouth stretched in a silent scream. Behind it, the wall bore a fresh scratch. Alice Savin. I destroyed the photo, but the dragging sound follows me still. A reminder of the terrifying things that linger in the abandoned prison in Switzerland.